I wanted to do a test on reflecting light slightly different than the usual bounce. Let's go check. So it's evening, it's probably let's see, what time is it? Oof. It is midnight. Yes, it is midnight here in Toronto. I couldn't sleep because this idea has been bothering me for some time. And today I wanted to talk about the Aputure spotlight. I caught up to Valentina Vee, one of the spearheaded people for the 4-minute light school that Aputure has been pushing on their online classes. She finally got an online thing, and then I jumped into her first class. And she talked about utilizing the spotlight and her other lightings in different ways. And she asked the question, what is a good way that you could use your spotlight to reflect and light a scene? And so I threw out the idea, like, what about mirrors? What about reflecting off water? Once I actually brought that up, it started hitting me like, you know what, I kind of want to see if I can do it. You spitball the idea, and then can we actually bring that into fruition? That's what I wanted to do today. Since we are in this COVID-19 battle and we have to stay home, being creative at home is very tough and also very creative. And I wanted to kind of make a really short film of it, just to kind of like give it a little bit of a story. And I did this like Indiana Jones diving into this cave-ish area, and basically I find the ultimate glory, which right now would be like Purell, and that's what I pulled out of the water. So this idea hit me, I'd say 2-3 days ago, and I was like, okay, now I want to do it. And I just hadn't had the time to really put it together, and it finally bothered me so much before I couldn't even go to sleep. I was like, I got to put this all together. So I started putting it together like around 10. My wife is still awake for a little bit longer, so she helped me for the first couple of minutes of shooting, at least the pan part of it, and then I lost her after that. So the last few shots, I basically set up and I refocused it for myself, and that got a little challenging, being by herself and filming herself, but I had a lot of fun doing it. So I made a mess, and as you can see behind me, there is a mess. I took apart my living room, basically, and rearranged it with lighting, and threw things in there, and yes, I have to clean it before I go to bed. I have here the Aputure spotlight. I put on it the 300D Mark II, and I pumped it up to like 90. And I aimed it, it almost looks like it's 20 degrees. I'm not exactly perfect on that, so don't quote me. It has the 19-degree attachment in front of the spotlight, and that's really the only light doing most of the work. Now, what you do see behind me are my RGB lights that connect to my Alexa. I put them in some kind of like cave light colors. They didn't really kick in that much, really not at all. The Aputure light at 90 destroys a lot of light, but the reason why I did the 90, a lot of people are probably thinking that's a lot of power at night and there's no light going on. But what was going through my head is I am bouncing light. So I am cutting the light each time I bounce. And the water, when it starts moving, is also refracting the light in different ways and cutting it a little bit more, throwing light every which way. So in like this first shot, I really wanted to see the motion of the water reflecting onto my face when I was walking into the scene. Didn't want to just say, I reflected off water, whoop-de-doo. I want to get beyond just that. I want to push the envelope just a little bit further. Now, I wanted a mirror. I went on Amazon, and it was very hard finding mirrors on Amazon and to keep them cheap and to get them delivered in a time lot that I was like, I don't want to wait a month and a half for my stuff because what's going on? My dumb butt ordered some pretty cheap mirrors. Now, I didn't read it kind of fast because I was going through so many. I think I just got frustrated. Look, I was like, I just want to get some freaking mirrors, right? And I got these guys. Yeah. They're 3 inches. They were $2 a pop, so I did go for the cheap. I got the cheap. I got exactly what I paid for. The problem with this is also it's a convex light, so it didn't do, I was like, okay, that's fine. I can use this. I was hoping to be flat, but it's convex. Anyways, I did use it, and I'll tell you in a minute how I did. So let's go back to the light into the water. So the light into the water into the plastic container. I wanted to use a mirror under the plastic container. I didn't have one. And we do have a large mirror, but it's like a body one that we have in our bedroom that, you know, can look at how good you look when you dress up or put ridiculous outfits like this on. So then I started like thinking, what the hell do I have? I was throwing everything on. I was putting like beer cans underneath these tea candlelight holders, metal picture frames with small like 8x10 picture frames. I even tried using keys. I was getting frustrated and I looked at the cheese graters like, holy crap, I can see myself really well. And I was like, that's obviously a reflective surface. I'm gonna use it. It'll also make a very interesting texture because it has obviously grading pieces on it and all different sides. And I tried all the different sides. Now, when I laid it straight down, it shot the light back up. So the angle of the 300D and the spotlight are a pretty good angle, but as far down as it going, and I think the way it was hitting the water, it was almost flattening out the light, which is amazing. Not what I wanted. It was hitting the ceiling almost right above it, and I was like, no, I want it to kind of like reflect the back wall. My original idea, and I'm gonna draw this diagram up for you guys. My original idea, I wanted it to do, in my mind, hit the water, hit a reflective surface like a mirror, bounce off another mirror to one side of me that was gonna act as my key light and act as the background light. That didn't exactly work correctly. I tried my best to get it to work, but let's go back to what actually happened. So in actuality, what I ran into was I reflected into the water. The water hit the cheese grater. The cheese grater had to go at an angle, and I don't have a lot of wedges. I was actually at first using a coaster and trying to do this whole, you know, like the card balancing setup. Yeah, that didn't work. I did it like 4 or 5 times. When it's late, your brain's only thinking like, I really want this to work, and you forget that logically, what are other things I can use? I ended up with using my measuring tape, and it had rubber tops, rubber so your hand doesn't slip if you're wearing gloves. And those rubber grooves that are on the measuring tape helped keep the slippery flat surface of the cheese grater from sliding. So that was really cool. So I was able to really angle it how I wanted, and I got it to where it made a really cool effect on the background. Now, when I finally looked at it after that, I noticed a few things. One, the background was white, the bouncing light was white, and there was a huge area of light that it was bouncing off the water and giving a really good reflection on the ceiling. I was not gonna film the ceiling, and I was like, well, I need to find a way to use that light and bring it back into the scene. And so I thought about using the reflector. I got another heavy duty stand, and I put one of my C-stand arms on it, and I angled it. I had to angle it a lot because I wanted it to be able to catch the light and re-angle it back at my head and give me a little bit of a shimmer rim light. Now, it didn't reflect as much as I thought it was gonna reflect. I did use the silver side and the gold side, and I ended up with the gold side because I was kind of go with a cavey look, and when I think of like caves, I think of like rocks on the side of the cave, and I was thinking like if it hits a gold side, it's like you're hitting the different colors of rock, and usually most rock is like an earthy tone, a brownish tone. So I didn't want silver to make it look like, oh, another mirror's right there. I wanted to make it look as if it was reflecting off of a shimmery rock, for instance, and coming back at me. And I actually didn't use gaff tape to hold that bad boy up. I really just kind of wedged the large Westcott reflector here that I have, and I was like, that's cool. I just caught it, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna run with it and hope it doesn't fall. Didn't fall, thankfully. It's still holding up, as you can see behind me, so that's great. I did have my little side lights from my Alexa RGB lights. They weren't very bright. They were just kind of adding a little bit of a shimmer in the background, not enough to really affect the scene. When I looked at the background, I was like, I want to add some color back there, and I started just like diving through my party gels. And I tried different colors, and I ended up using the green coloring. And I like the fact that I only put it on the cheese grater, because the cheese grater is what's reflecting the background. It didn't affect the lighting hitting my face, making it seem like it's a separate light in the background, which I loved. I was like, oh, that's exactly what I was going for. I wanted to show as if I had that light going on. The light in the background is, it looks like it's another light, and hopefully the reflector light adds another light. So make it seem like I have a 3-light setup using one light. I wanted to go even further. And I was just playing with some of the mirrors, and I was like, oh, how am I gonna use these things? I started like throwing them around, seeing if I could reflect it off of this, reflect off of that. And I was sitting there standing, and I just kind of like held it out. And all of a sudden it like flared in front of the camera. And it would seem like that it would look like a flashlight, and that's what I aimed for that. You didn't see it. I shot it in a way that I only wanted to see this area because I didn't want anyone to notice that it obviously is a living room. But I wanted to kind of give it a feel of like, oh, I'm inside of a really tight spaced cave. And the only way you can film inside of a tight space cave is with like a really zoomed in lens to give it that, oh, you're inside of an area. And that's what I did. On the camera settings, to help even bring out the light even more, I actually set my camera to 4600. Now, the lights are daylight. You know, the 300D Mark II is a daylight light. And if I put it at 5600, everything would have a nice good white beam on it, and the reflection would be off a beam. But going cooler actually brought out some of the blue out of that light, so making it seem like it's at night, which it really is, but inside of a dark cave with reflecting light off of a water inside of a cave kind of gives off a little bit more of a bluish tone. That's it. I mean, I have the diagram here. I go, so let's go over that one more time. One light setup. I have the 300D Mark II set at 90% power, in through the spotlight, into the water, going straight through the water, through my plastic container, which is probably also diffusing it, hitting the then cheese grater underneath, put it on the most reflective side it has, reflecting it at an angle back at the background, gelled with the green gel. Going back up, back to the water reflection, it's reflecting back up at the ceiling, which I angled a reflector on its gold side. And then on top of that, I utilized these little 3-inch convex little mirrors, reflected the light off the spotlight back at the lens to give it that flashlight kind of, you know, flare. That's it. I did what I was aiming to do. I hope it stirs up some ideas in your creativity, gets you wanting to create something as well. I mean, this is what we're doing now that we're at home, stuck between confined spaces. Because right now, most creative things are shut down, especially here in Toronto. I know that there's some other places around the world that are still filming, and it's sad. And I hope you guys don't catch anything, but be mindful, wash your hands, and just stay safe out there, guys. You know, be creative, but stay safe. So have a good one, and I look forward to talking to you guys again.